validate your mercy to me. Oh, you know my beat is concrete. Just breathe, stay on my feet. You know my beat is concrete. Just breathe, stay on your feet.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Loaded Mag NUFC. We are back for another Away Days special, and we've got not one special guest, but two, because the main man, wrong way, this way, is back. How you doing, Chris Hall? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, mate. It's funny actually. I think over the past couple of months, I've been off, then I've come back, and then I went off again, then I come back. So I feel like I've been away for weeks and weeks and weeks. But correct me if I'm wrong. Was I on the away days for Fulham, or was I not? I was definitely on an away days recently, anyway. But I feel like I've been gone for months, to be fair, because I've been away. I went to me friend's wedding in Montenegro, so I've been on the jollies with the family, which has been lovely. And I'm now off work now till middle of next week, so all good. Feeling very refreshed, and obviously, as always, can't wait to come back to away days.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to have you back as well. And look, I think it was Richie that joined me for the Fulham one. It might have been the match before the Palace. Was it the Palace game?
Maybe it was Palace.
Bournemouth.
Yeah,
or I don't know. You were here.
It was recent. It was recent. Yeah.
Yeah, you were definitely here for one of the recent games. But look, great to have you back.
Thanks, mate.
On the shows, mate. Glad you had a good trip away, and yeah, we're back at it. And what a time! What a week! The celebrations have been sort of ongoing for all Newcastle fans this week as we relive the brilliant 1 year anniversary of our famous takeover. And look, yeah, I thought it's only fair we put that picture up from our good friend Jordan Cronin, and dropped it on today as a reminder of what it was this time last year, the party in Southend playing just outside St James's Park. Great atmospheres. Look, I want to get your thoughts before we bring Lewis on. We didn't get a chance to ask you yesterday, Chris, is that, how have you sort of assessed this year, and ultimately, what do you see for the year ahead for Newcastle United?
Yeah, do you know what, Pete? I was gutted to miss out on the show last night. There was, I call it last minute. It wasn't really last minute. It was last minute in my head. But yeah, I was out for a meal. It was like a celebration meal following the wedding. So yeah, I obviously couldn't join you last night, which I was gutted about. But I'm going to watch the show back. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it's just been quite the year, hasn't it? I mean, it's mad to think that it is a year to the day since we got our takeover. And I was on Twitter earlier, and I saw all the videos, all the pictures, and it's just, if you look at where we were 12 months ago to where we are now. I know there was a few rumblings during the transfer window, saying that we hadn't done enough, and some people have, apart from at the weekends when we got those valuable 3 points, and well-deserved 3 points, by the way. Yeah. There were some people saying, "Oh, it's not a great start to the season," and then all of a sudden we get 3 points at the weekends. You look at the league table and you're like, "We're above Man United, we're above Liverpool," and you think we've lost one game all season, and that one game brings back horrible memories, because I was there in the away end where we lost in the last minute at Anfield. And I think, do you know what? We've played Brighton away, we've played Wolves away, we've played Liverpool away, City at home, and you look at those games, and last season under Bruce, we wouldn't have got a draw away to Brighton, and we wouldn't have got a draw away to Wolves. It just wouldn't have happened. So we've come so far, and even when you look at the starting 11, Pete, it was always going to be a gradual up, change in the team. And I think for me now, is going forward for the next 12 months, for me now, I think it's all about, I keep using this word, it's all about doing the underbelly of the squad. So when we look to the bench, it's looking at the bench and thinking, oh, we've got 2 or 3 options there. So God bless them. I don't want to talk down about him, but having the likes of, say, Miggy Almiron on the bench, because we brought in a top class right winger, if you like. Having the likes of John Joe Shelby on the bench because we brought in a James Maddison, stuff like that, where you look to the bench and you think, you know what, we can change this game up, or we can rest this player, or this player is injured, etc., etc. It's just about having more options, and obviously we're only going to get bigger and better as time goes on. And I think if you look at like the backroom staff, you look at the technical director, the chief executive, we've transformed the back of the club. And now I think we're on absolutely the right journey to progress, move forwards, and just build. We've got the backbone now. And for me now, every window, add 2 or 3 players, that little bit of quality, and who knows, could be 2 windows, could be 3 windows, 4 windows, and this team's going to look transformed. And I don't actually think it'll take, mainly because of Eddie Howe, I don't actually think it'll take as long as what some people were thinking, in terms of us really challenging for European places. I think there's a possibility of it this season, but I think next season will definitely be challenging for Europe, in my opinion.
I think you're right. And like you said, we've got an opportunity this season to really kind of push ahead and try and save ourselves a year potentially of building and developing by how we finish in the league this season. We've got that opportunity of really going one step further. But just before we get our fantastic guest in, because the point you made kind of leads into very much our guest on tonight. But I was going to steal your chat for a second. Yano says, how long does it take the Scousers to get the lippy on? Look, I don't know, Yano. I have no idea of how long. Maybe a while. I don't know. Can you answer that, Chris?
Do you know what, Yano? This is au naturel. I know you can tell I've made a real big effort, but this is au naturel this evening. But one thing I will say, which I was talking to Pete about before the show kicked off, I was also very excited about it's just been announced that the Eurovision is coming to Liverpool next year. So keep an eye on that. Yeah. So I'd love to see if I can drag the wife to it. I must admit, it's like my guilty pleasure, the Eurovision. I like watching it. I think it's funny. So I'll have to see if I can get down for that.
Yeah, maybe we'll win it this year. Who knows?
We were Robs. We were Robs in the last one.
We may well get that well-deserved win that we've been alluded to. But look, fantastic. So many in the chat. Geordie 2 for life. Yano, of course. Mr. Keith Roll. We might well see an appearance later on in the show. Tim Review Stato, great for you to join us. I know you're up in Newcastle for the game tomorrow. Hope you have a great weekend for your birthday as well. Happy birthday to you, Alex. So yeah, hope you're having a good birthday celebrations. Lisa, of course. Paul Gallant, thank you for sharing. So many others in the chat. Of course, Simon, our fantastic sponsor as well. And Truls, welcome Truls, is in the chat too. So if you haven't already, click that like, click that thumbs up just as we kick off. And we are absolutely delighted to welcome back Lewis from BEESOTTED Brentford to talk all things Newcastle United and, of course, Brentford. So welcome in, Lewis.
Hey, good to be back.
Great to have you back. Really, really good chat last time with you about all things Brentford, and it's a pleasure to have you back on. So, I mean, how are things with you?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Yeah, looking forward to the game tomorrow. I was saying just before we came on that I had planned to get the train up. I live down in Brighton, and it was a nice kind of easy journey really last year. But this year the train strikes put paid to that, so I'm setting off at about 6 a.m. tomorrow, expecting like a 6.5, 7 hour journey, and then staying overnight and doing the same journey in reverse on Sunday. So yeah, that's a bit of a pain, but otherwise just really can't wait. And yeah, all really good, thanks.
Great to have you on, for sure, and that is one hell of a journey. Like that is a super levels of support that to go all that way, and like in the nicest possible way. I hope you come back with no points, but I hope that the journey and the trip and obviously the weekend Newcastle fans up north will look after you, that's for sure. But I wanted to get your thoughts on, obviously, first of all, the takeover. I asked Chris the question, obviously it's our anniversary today of when the club changed hands of ownership. And, what are your sort of, from the outside looking in, what are your assessments of Newcastle United's year under new ownership's been, from a Brentford point of view, looking at Newcastle?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with a lot of what Chris said. I think the way that the club is kind of evolving, rather than that there's not been, I think, the huge number of big money transfers that people expected. The whole thing is evolving really smartly, I think. You've brought in a superb manager. I think he's as good as any of the English managers out there. You can just tell from the outside there's a different feel about it. And I saw you guys play Man City on the box, and that was one of the best, probably the best game I've seen this season. And it was just a fantastic game, full of attacking football. You guys were taking all kinds of risks. It reminded me of Bournemouth under Eddie Howe, actually, and that just seems so distant from the negative stuff you were playing under Steve Bruce, which just looked like try and park the bus and try and nick a goal. It's just like night and day, really. So I think things are looking really good for you guys, and I'd expect you, whether it's this season or next, you're going to be challenging for Europe, I think, very soon, and you've got some serious talent on that side now. So I'm nervous about tomorrow, I've got to admit.
Yeah, and look, it was the other way around. I think the last time we played at St James's Park, it was Howe's first game. We were there. We travelled up for the game.
Yeah.
And
he had COVID, didn't he? I remember that.
He did. He wasn't able to make it, but we were nervous going into that game purely because we didn't know what type of Newcastle United would come out. We wanted, obviously, to make sure that we got the win. We needed it. We needed a win. We were desperate for it back then. And it generally was a good game. 3-3, action at both ends. It was a really sort of entertaining game, a real game that kind of epitomised the Premier League for sure. But, you mentioned something just a second ago, Lewis, and you mentioned about, Newcastle's, rise and thinking about where we're going to be going and challenging for Europe. But, looking at the table, you are there. I think the comments in the way.
Sorry, mate. Sorry.
But no, don't worry. But you are there in 10th place after 8 games and only a point away from Newcastle. So I'll ask you the question. First of all, how do you assess your start of the season? And look, is there a potential European charge for you with the way you've started the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've started well. I mean, the real highlight, the standout performance and result was beating Man United 4-0. And after half an hour of that game, we were 4 up, and I was thinking, God, we could actually, we could get double figures here. And to be fair, they improved after half time. So that was definitely the standout performance. We've leaked more goals than we were doing last year. So we've had to, we've gone 2 down on 3 different occasions, I think, and clawed it back. But the defence looks much more fragile than it did last year. But we've got more going forward, which is great. And I think that the fears that losing Eriksen were going to plunge us back towards the bottom of the table haven't been realised. We've bought really cleverly, as we always do, in the window, brought in some really, really good young players. And again, it's a bit like you guys, we're building for the future. It's not we're not doing a bloody Forest, bringing in 23 players at 150 million. These are smart buys of good value players, I'd say. So, we haven't, other than... I'm just trying to think. We played Arsenal and got played off the park by them. Yeah. Other than that, we've not played any of the real top sides. So, I think the jury's out on how much better or worse we are than last season. But I think, again, going back to what Chris was saying, like you look at the bench, and we have got a few injuries at the moment, so it won't be quite the case tomorrow. But our bench is like seriously strong these days. And last year, we were having to play. There wasn't much to come off the bench and change the game. And I think that's probably the final thing I'd say is that I think Thomas Frank is really developing as a manager. He's really taken to the 5 subs opportunity with typical kind of like thoughtfulness, and that's helped us come back in a number of games now, is the way that he's worked the bench. He seems to have got the hang of that really quickly. So yeah, I mean, I'm positive. I'm obviously delighted. This is still a fairy tale for Brentford. We're really like, a League One side. Everyone knows that probably at best, So for us to be in the Premier League remains an absolute, no one can quite believe it. But we're certainly consolidating. I think, we've proved that the second season syndrome is a load of bullshit. That's just a myth. Actually, we're financially more secure than we were because we've got all the money from last year. We're building, we're recycling, and every time we do that, we just get that little bit stronger.
No, it's interesting you say that myth about the second season syndrome, because it's one of those things. It tends to be those clubs that do suffer that second season syndrome is the ones that make really bad decisions with recruitment and various other things. And we can see that's clearly something that Brentford haven't done. Your recruitment has been really good, and I've just picked out a few of them here. Put a few snaps up. So you brought the likes of Ben Mee in. You brought likes of Damsgaard in, who was a big signing. I'll be honest, I was shocked when I found out that Brentford had got him, because he is a talented boy. The likes of Hickey as well, linked with Arsenal quite heavily, linked with us in January of this year, and now you guys have picked him up, and it seems like they're doing really well. Like, how have you, have any one of those new signings stood out for you in terms of really, really impressed you, or have they all hit the ground running?
2 of them, I'd say. Ben Mee has been phenomenal. He's been probably man of the match in each of the last 3 games.
Wow.
And, we always knew that he was a very decent kind of Premier League defender, but I think he's taken everyone by surprise just how dominant he is and how well he reads the game. He's been absolutely phenomenal. Hickey is the other one. He's come in and he's genuinely 2-footed, which is really unusual. You cannot tell which is the stronger foot. Yeah. He's for a young player. He's only like 20, 21 or something, but he just looks like he belongs. I mean, he's still learning and he's still fitting in. I'd say he's quite tentative going forward, unlike Rico Henry on the other side. But he's a bit of a unit as well. He's got like a bit of a baby face, but he's fairly tough, and he doesn't mind putting his foot in and being brave. So those 2 have stood out. I mean, I think Damsgaard is only just beginning to get minutes. Last week was his first start against Bournemouth. He's up till now been coming on for like 15, 20 minutes towards the end of the game. And he's you can see that he's got a lot about him. His footwork is really kind of quite special. Reminds us a little bit of Saeed Benrahma when he was a big favourite of the fans. So he's clearly, as long as we can keep him fit, he has got a long-term arthritis issue, which I think probably put a few other clubs off. But yeah, that was a real coup and softened the blow of losing Ericsson. Yeah, there you go. Quickly, I've forgotten him. And then we brought a couple of others. Keane Lewis Potter from Hull. Yes. He's kind of one for the future. He's out injured tomorrow, but he looks really sharp, and he's adding some pace to the side, which we needed to. Who else we got? That's probably I did scribble them down before the call just so I didn't forget. And the other one who is not even in the first team squad but who has been bought with an eye on the future, is a young Ukrainian kid called Yarmoliuk, I think you pronounce it as. So we haven't seen him at all yet, but this guy is seriously highly rated in Ukraine. They reckon he's like as good a player as they had in a decade. So he is only, I think he's 17, possibly just turned 18, and they're kind of introducing him gradually into the B team. But he, by all accounts, is going to be very, very special. And again, it's all of these players, apart from Ben Mee, are young. Even Damsgaard's only 22, I think. So he's achieved a lot already. You know, he was amazing at the Euros when he replaced Ericsson. Actually, he really was, I thought, as good as any of their players. So yeah, really exciting. Bought really well. I haven't seen any duds yet. They've got it right again. It's brilliant.
Excellent. Yeah, no, it's good to see that, you know, they're making the right decisions and bringing them in. And would you say that this man is really key to that level of sort of recruitment? Has he been key in making it happen in terms of the level of player that's come in into the club for you?
I think I think probably where you see his impact more is on the development of the players. So he will obviously have a say in transfers, but we've got a really smart scouting system. So I think typically they will kind of suggest players to the manager, and he will say, yeah, I like the look of him, or yeah, I trust you on that. But where he really earns his money is on improving players once they're with us and integrating them into the setup.
Right, okay. Interesting. But yeah, he looks like he's done a tremendous job.
He's incredible. You know, we love him and wouldn't swap him for anyone. And we were, you know, I think there was talk about when the Brighton job came up, you know, would he move there? And we were kind of a bit anxious about that. You know, if Rodgers goes from Leicester, would he be the next one? Or I think, and he said, you know, this is unfinished business at Brentford. He's so well backed by the club, the structure of the club, and the forward-thinking nature of it really suits him. He responds well to that, like intellectually. I think he's a really clever guy. So I don't think he's going anywhere yet, but he's in demand now.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that about Leicester, because obviously I'm based in Leicester, and I'm just, you know, thinking about that because the Rodgers situation is quite delicate. Obviously, they got the win against Forest, but it could quite easily turn again, and the fans actually wanted him out.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I wouldn't trust that Forest result, because I did watch that game and I thought both teams were pretty poor actually, and I think Leicester were there for the taking. Forest were just so what's the word, like dysfunctional really, and it's not surprising because they've got 23 new players. Why on earth they've taken that decision, I do not know, but you know, I think I wouldn't be surprised if that's a blip for Leicester, because I think they will be really close, if not in the bottom three this year.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm usually wrong, so I'll probably be wrong on that, but you heard it here.
Well, it's interesting because the Leicester, a lot of the people that I know that support Leicester are worried that they could be that they could be in the bottom three. But it's interesting that you mentioned it about you know, Thomas Frank and the situation there, because it potentially he could go to Leicester if Rodgers does leave. So it's an interesting one to keep an eye on. I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, welcome back, Chris. Just disappeared out of nowhere. But no, it happened to me about 2 or 3 times last night. So I think I might have passed that lurgy onto you. It does tend to go around a little bit. But look, yeah, like Keith has just said in the chat, 80 plus watching in the chat. Great to have you on and watching this talk, all things Newcastle and Brentford. If you haven't yet, click the like. Also get your questions in. Now, you know, myself and Chris have started a few questions that we will bring to Lewis as the show goes on. But I think we're at the point now where we talk about the more obvious question to be had, and we've got that mutual player that's played for both clubs, why not discuss him now? And what was interesting is that I do a little piece for BBC Sport now and again, and they gave me the topic of would Toney start in Newcastle's team, and I tweeted it out the other day so people could have a read. Newcastle fans were quite mixed on their opinions on it, and I'm not expecting you to read that there, but the bulk of it is that I think now with Wilson and Toney, I personally don't think he would get into our team, although I do rate him as a player. Interestingly, BEESOTTED's own Ian Westbrook responded and put his own opinions in there, and basically he said he believes that he would get into Newcastle's team, but clearly they don't want to lose him and you want to keep him at Brentford. But it was nice to get an opinion from the other side of the coin, from Brentford, and Ian put his point across from yourselves, from BEESOTTED. So I don't know if you managed to read that particular article, Lewis. And firstly, let's get your thoughts on it, because I want to get Chris's thoughts on it as well.
I think it's really interesting, and I hadn't actually read what Ian had written earlier until just now. But he's a good fella, and he knows his stuff. It's really tough. Callum Wilson, I think, is one of the best strikers in the country. Not just one of the best English strikers, but he's just a phenomenon, I think. And it's been brilliant now for like 7 or 8 years. Isaac, I don't know much about him, but he looks like he's got something very different to offer. So Ivan would struggle to, he wouldn't necessarily be the top man there, but I would agree with Ian. I mean, he's got something about him. There's an arrogance there, a self-belief, a determination to improve, and it's just difficult to imagine him being anywhere really on the bench. He almost wouldn't allow it to happen. He'd just work that bit harder in training. I mean, he's got some real good all-round skills as well. You often see him like heading the ball out the box on the opposition set plays. He can drop deep and make the play. I think Wilson's a better finisher than Ivan Toney. But there's an argument to say that Ivan Toney has perhaps a slightly better all-round game. I don't know. But Wilson's more proven. He's more established. He's done it for at least 7 or 8 years now at the top level, and has always been underrated, I think. And I'm really pleased to see him absolutely getting the recognition he deserves at Newcastle,
Yeah, I think that's more than a fair assessment, Lewis, on both players. But look, Chris, I know you've got some opinions on Ivan Toney. So look, first of all, before you get into it, would you rather have Wilson in the team over Toney? Do you think he would get into Newcastle's team? And then look, I know you've got 1 or 2 things you want to say on the Toney situation.
Yeah, I mean, of late, I've been a really, really big fan of Ivan Toney. I mean, obviously, he had a few loan spells when he was with us, didn't he? I think he went to Barnsley and Wigan and Peterborough and places like that, and then he made a permanent move to Peterborough. Scored a lot of goals, did well, and then obviously got his move to Brentford. And to be fair, I've got to say, and I'm sure Lewis will agree, one of the best performances I've seen this season was when Toney hit that hat-trick. Yeah, and I remember watching it and I was just like, wow. He made it look effortless. So for me, I think it's a really good question, Pete, because I think in this current formation, I would be surprised if, say, for example, we sign Toney tomorrow, I would be surprised if he started ahead of Wilson, I've got to be honest. But I think if we were to sign someone like Toney, whether it be January, the summer, or whenever, I think you would have to find a place for him. And I think it would actually maybe prompt us to change our formation. I think we'd probably go 2 up top, because I don't think you could leave him on the bench, because I do really rate Ivan Toney. I think he's really, really, he's sorted his head out. And I think for any fans who, a few fans, and I was one of them, a couple of years ago, questioning Rafa, when he sold him. And I thought the interview that Ivan Toney did recently was absolutely fantastic. When he came out and he said, you know what, if I was the manager, if it was up to me, would I have kept me? And he was like, no, I wouldn't. His attitude was wrong. He wasn't taking it seriously, and it was when he dropped down the leagues, and then he thought, you know what, like I've got to be serious here. I've got to really, get my head screws on, really, get my attitude straight, get myself sorted, and that's exactly what he's done. And now, I mean, Pete, I'll throw this one back at you. Would you take Ivan Toney over Dominic Calvert-Lewin? I think I know the answer.
Yeah.
I'd
take me over Dominic Calvert-Lewin in current state. But yeah, of course, Toney. I do, and I put it. To be fair, I put it in a piece. I said, he's a talented boy.
Yeah.
But like you've said, it's and obviously yourself, Lewis, you've talked about both players being very, very talented. In some areas, Toney's better than Wilson, but in other areas, Wilson's better. It's one of those things.
Yeah, just picking up on what Chris said as well about that hat trick he got. The second goal, I mean, I thought the third goal was just genius, actually. But the second goal, which was the free kick, I think I got in the right order there. He never used to be on free kicks at all, so he's worked on that and turned himself into someone who's now he's front of the queue when the ball's like outside the box after that goal, and that typifies him. I think he's really trying to improve the whole time, and he is. It's great to see, really, and he's got such self-confidence. I mean, you watch him take a penalty. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know. He never looks like he's going to miss. Famous last words, going to miss tomorrow, isn't he? Like,
I hope so.
But he's that self-confidence and self-belief in his case it's already taking him a long way. I think he just backs himself with everything that he does.
Very confident young man, isn't he? Very confident.
Totally.
And like you say with that hat trick, he I don't know, he looked like possessed or something, didn't he? It was like, even when he scored, he was like calm, just as in like, it's just what I do. And it's that's when I really sat up and thought, wow, this lad's not messing around. And since then, even Pete, we saw him, didn't we? For Eddie's first game. Well, it wasn't his first game because he wasn't on the sidelines, but his hold-up play is absolutely fantastic. Like, he really brings people into play. He's big, he's strong, he's quick. And I think he's definitely got the advantage over Callum Wilson for things like that. It's probably, whereas, like you say, Pete, Callum Wilson's slightly different in that he hangs off the central defender and then he just goes. So, different types of striker. But I actually think, as I said before, I think him and Wilson will probably complement each other pretty well.
I agree. They would be a really exciting combination, I think, actually.
And to be fair, it actually could be an alternative formation for England that could work. Because we do it really, really heavily reliant. We are so heavily reliant on Harry Kane. I fear for this next week. This next month, 6 to 8 weeks before the World Cup really, really kicks in. Because if we lose from an England standpoint, Harry Kane for anything, we haven't got the same caliber to replace him. But as what you both just said, and Chris, you touched on it earlier, is that if you had an Ivan Toney and a Callum Wilson playing together and you change the system slightly, still attacking, you've got great crosses of the ball, Trent on one side, Shaw and Chilwell from another. You get balls into the box. They're the type of strikers that can get on the end of it. And you can still be successful as an international team without Harry Kane, but you're just having to tweak things slightly to make it work. And I just think, like, from that point of view, it will be really, really interesting to see an England manager do that to make it work. So,
but he had an opportunity to do that in the last back-to-back fixtures. Put Toney in the squad, took him out of the squad for the first game, and then didn't even give him any minutes at all in the second. So the chance to actually size him up, have a look at him as a potential, replacement for Kane should he get injured, was missed. I mean, that's just dreadful man management apart from anything else. What's Ivan Toney meant to think about that? Just was appalling, I thought.
Let's stick with that because I think it's a great point. What is going through your head as a Brentford fan when you see that in those two fixtures? What are your thoughts there? Because
well, we were all really excited about it, because it was the first time in I think it was 70 years that, or something like that, that Brentford player had been selected for England.
Wow.
Loads of, we were all really hyped up, if we're going to the game or watching the game on telly, it's like, is he going to come? And then, so he's left out of the first one. Everyone was like a bit nonplussed about that, but he'll surely get some game time in the second one. No, at the minute England stopped losing that game, I knew that he wasn't going to go on because Southgate is just such a cautious individual, But he's jeopardised that relationship with Ivan Toney, who's also eligible for Jamaica as well, actually. So, and fortunately for Southgate, you could say they haven't qualified for the World Cup. But if they had, if I was him, I'd be like changing my my allegiances, I think, because I would feel wronged. He ended up looking really full. He did loads of media, he had the real spotlight on him, everyone telling his backstory and stuff. And then he didn't even get on the pitch. It's just, it's not just because he's a Brentford player, but I think I would feel seriously sorry for any player who'd been mishandled in that way.
Yeah.
And he's got, he's not averse to saying what he thinks or to, doing, behaving quite emotionally. There's every chance I think that if his treatment doesn't improve from Southgate, that he'll become one of the reggae boys.
Yeah, but you touched on it there in the way he was treated by Southgate. But Chris, if that was me, I'd be massively embarrassed. You're put in front of the media, you're having these interviews as being this first international call up, and you're being bigged up and you're being talked about in all this light. And literally, as you said, Lewis, all the talk was on Ivan Toney being called up. He had great form, better form than some of the strikers that were in the international setup. And then you don't get on. What were your feelings on that, Chris?
I think do you know what? I think it just kind of makes a mockery of the whole call up, really, because now when he gets a call up again, he'll just be like, "Oh, great, okay, or hopefully I'll get on the pitch this time." We're not talking about a player who has been brought in because of 3, 4, 5, 6 injuries. We're talking about a player who's deserved the call up. He's earned the call up, and Southgate. Well, I don't want it to turn into a big England show, but Southgate is, for me, I think he's shown his weakness in his management. By doing that, and also the likes of, I'm only going to pick the players in form, the players who are playing well for the team, and then he then chooses Luke Shaw and Harry Maguire and co. And you think it's just. I just think it's really poor. And you made the point, Lewis. There was 2 games there, and there was definitely an opportunity for him to play. Even a half, even bring him on for that, just see what he can do. Because at the end of the day, this World Cup, it's happening in November. He should really be trying to test as many players as he can. I understand why. He started Kane because he's probably thinking, Kane will obviously want to get his caps up. He want to get the amount of goals up. I understand that, but there would have been no harm in giving Toney half an hour. It wouldn't have altered anything, or change your shape. Do you know what I mean? That's what these games are there for. Change your shape. Stick Toney and Kane up front. Give it a whirl. There's no harm done. I just found it baffling, but I don't know. It is what it is, and I think going forwards, Brentford fans, and this would be my philosophy to it, Lewis. But that's just me. I wouldn't be bothered whether he get called up or not now, because I just think, whilst he's not playing away and playing extra games, he's you can wrap him in cotton wool and keep him ready for Brentford.
Yeah, definitely. And there was a comment before. Where did I put it? It's would I eat there? And this is how I felt from a Newcastle perspective, and what goes through his mind if Trips doesn't come on for England is getting fit for Saturday. So that's what we were like from a Newcastle perspective. But I completely understand where you were coming from, Lewis, because of how many years you waited for a player representing your club. and all the hype that came about it, going for England and then not even getting a start, it is really, really poor. And one or two have said in the chat that, it's almost like we've thrown away this World Cup because we've kept Southgate in charge. For me, I think his selection process is flawed. He's selecting people that he's comfortable with and that he knew either from the under 21s when he was there beforehand. He's kept his pool very, very small, and he's almost at times been pressured into selecting players when he didn't necessarily want to. For me, and look, it might sound biased, but the back end of last season, Dan Burn for Newcastle United was the best performing centre back, and he never got international recognition. I thought it was an absolute disgrace. In the build up, and I still stand by it now. I think if Newcastle had have got a point against Chelsea away at Stamford Bridge, and we didn't concede that goal in the last minute, I'm convinced that he would have been called up. I'm convinced of it. His selection process is all over the place, and it's flawed. And it's not just what they're doing on the pitch; it's actually who he's picking for these squads that is having a big problem.
Do you know what, Pete? Just to add in before we change subject. There was two things I wanted to say off the back of what you just said about Dan Burn. But the first thing I wanted to say was, if you remember, way back when, when we had Michael Owen, and when Michael Owen, got called up for England, and we were all buzzing because we were like, oh my God, we've not had that since Shearer, the main man, England player, plays for Newcastle, striker. And then obviously we all know what happened with Michael Owen, when he like hobbled onto the pitch to make sure he could play, gets injured. We miss him for like a year. And certainly maybe that's when my views of England switched off a little bit, because I remember just being so bitter and so angry about it. And I remember thinking, you should put your club before your country. The club is the one who's paying your wages. Do you know what I mean? If you're not fit, if you're not ready, I know you want to play for your country, but ultimately you're there to do a job, and that shouldn't be to the detriment of your club who pay your wages. But anyway, that's a separate issue. But yeah, in terms of Dan Burn, I was reading a stat the other day, Pete, saying that isn't he like the most selected defender out of our defence from Eddie Howe, in terms of him, he's like a mainstay. You've probably seen it yourself, Lewis, the fact that we've now actually been playing Dan Burn left back. Now Dan Burn doesn't look like a left back, does he? He's like 6'6", 6'7", and it looks really odd. And every time you're up against a pacey winger, you always go, oh no, he's going to turn him. And what Pete's just referred to there in that Chelsea game, Dan Burn switched off just for 1 second. It resulted in Havertz being put through. But I agree with Pete. It's absolutely shocking that Gareth Southgate's picking 5 right backs, and he's picking like one left back. He's got like Luke Shaw, and sometimes he'll play Trippier there left back. And you're looking at Dan Burn, you're thinking an unorthodox centre back who plays very well at centre back, can also play left back. Imagine bringing him on for the last 10 minutes when you need a goal and you start lumping the ball in the box, or similarly you're trying to defend your goal. Having someone like Dan Burn, he's going to ruffle a few feathers, isn't he? And I just think it's really, really odd that you've got a really high-performing defender there playing in a very high-performing team at the minute, and he can't even get in the England squad. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's mad. But look, England aside, look, it is what it is. Hopefully, Ivan Toney after Saturday continues to keep performing, and we get Wilson performing, and they both make the squad, because I don't know how. I've not really kept a close eye on Tammy Abrahams, but I don't think he's pulled up as many trees as he did last season so far. So it could well be that there's still an opportunity for both players to get in the England squad, and I'd love that. I'd love Toney and Wilson to both go to the World Cup. I think it'd be great recognition for both players and both clubs. But yeah, I think there's a couple of questions we can go to before we go to our next stage. It was a really interesting one. Who was it from? From Ian, actually. I don't know if you can see it, Chris.
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
For Lewis.
It was. So Ian asked you, Lewis.
Was that the Darlington?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't actually, I'm afraid. But I'm impressed that you were, Ian.
Yeah. Well, Ian's actually a Darlington fan.
Oh, okay.
He's a massive supporter of Newcastle in the channel, but he's a Darlington fan. So yeah, Yeah, no, a good question there, Ian, and continue to get your questions in. There are a few more that are popped up. I think there's another one. If there's another one in there, Chris, go for it.
Yeah, we've got about 5 or 6. So I'll fire them at Lewis now before we move on to our next stage. But our very own Lisa Mole, good evening, Lisa. Lisa asks, serious question, and obviously we were just talking about England then. Do you guys think when Southgate goes that Eddie Howe will be approached? And also, do you know what? We didn't even discuss this, Pete, last time we were talking about, potential people being approached for the England manager's job. Could Thomas Frank be approached?
I think if they didn't approach Howe, something's wrong. You know, I mean, what he did at Bournemouth was phenomenal, and what he's already doing at Newcastle is phenomenal. I think Potter would probably be another, decent candidate. Thomas Frank, I don't know. I don't think they would need to consider him because there are 2 outstanding English candidates, and both of whom really do deserve the go, particularly Eddie Howe, I think, because he's done it for longer than Potter.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if one day Frank gets the Danish manager's job, but obviously not quite as interesting for us lot on this call.
What about you, Pete? What do you think? I mean, I know we've touched very briefly on how, and I think when we were last speaking about it, it's probably the last show I was on actually, and we were saying that it looks like for us, Eddie Howe is probably the number 1 choice, and I can perfectly see why. And I think Eddie Howe came out at the press conference, didn't he, and basically very politely said, that he would never say no, in the future. But right now, he's really happy in his job. And obviously, as we all know, Graham Potter's recently accepted and is now, in charge of Chelsea. But do you think that England would still go in for Eddie Howe?
Yeah, I do. I think they'll try and test the waters. I think that they'll be quite bullish with it, and they'll want the best manager they could possibly get. And I think Eddie Howe is that guy, because without being too disrespectful to some other English-based managers, is that Potter's not going to leave Chelsea. It's a once-in-a-lifetime job for him. He's not going to leave that. The only way he leaves is if he gets sacked. But I personally feel that Eddie Howe is the same. And I'd said this before with some others that I was talking to last week, is that I honestly see Newcastle United as that once-in-a-lifetime job now. You've got the project in hand. You've got the richest owners in the world. You've got the opportunity to win a cup for Newcastle United, a trophy for the first time in God knows how many years since the Milk Cup. And, to put yourself above Sir Bobby Robson, Kevin Keegan, all those legendary managers that we literally like hold in the highest regard. He's got an opportunity to obliterate all of that. Like for me, that's bigger than the England job, in my opinion. The international jobs are not the pool that they once were, but I still think England will come in for him, even though he said what he said. They'll still go for him. They'll still ask the question, and I think he'll say no. But that's, like I say, just my opinion. Are you of the same mindset, Chris?
Yeah, no, I agree. I without trying to be biased, and Lewis, I hope you don't think we are biased. I think now there's, I think of it off the top of my head, and I think like Newcastle's got to be up there with one of the top 5 jobs in world football. As in, like, the world's the oyster. We're literally starting from the bottom. Like, Newcastle fans couldn't stand Mike Ashley. We were all depressed. The season was it the season before? Yeah, it was. I think it was the season before Ashley left. We actually gave away 10,000 season tickets. Imagine that now. It'd be like getting a season ticket's like winning a golden ticket. It's like impossible to try and get one. And the season before, we were giving away 10,000, and people still weren't turning up. So you think, the owners have come in, they've done all the right things, and so far so good, touch wood. They've really got on board with things, and they will make mistakes going forwards, but up to now, I can't actually think of many, if any. So as a manager, that must be the best thing. Eddie Howe's come out, hasn't he, and said, it's his choice on the signings. The club is supporting him. And you think he must just be thinking, this is great. I know I'm on a fantastic journey, a fantastic ride, and things are only going to get better. And like you say, Pete, he's gonna write his name in history. And plus, I think the one last thing I was going to say, and I think it was you that said this, Pete, and it was a great point when you were saying that Eddie Howe is very much a day-to-day manager. You know, he likes to be in the thick of it. And I think with international football, and we've heard other really experienced top managers say, they kind of see international football as like towards the end of their career. You know, where it's not day to day, it's not intense. And I think Eddie Howe loves being in every day. I think that's what he lives and breathes for.
Yeah.
Definitely, great points, Chris, and I agree with all of them. But look, if Thomas Frank and Eddie Howe not available, as Janos said, there's an outstanding candidate soon to be out of work from West Brom that might want to make up the list in big old Steve Bruce. So if they want to go and offer the job to him, I'm sure he'd love another pay packet. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think I'll be watching much England football if they did offer him the job. But look, nothing surprising me in football, so yeah, no, like I wouldn't be shocked if he was put in the conversation, probably by Luke Edwards. But look, that's another thing, and we'll get onto that another time. But look, I think we're getting to the point now where we start looking at the game in a little bit more detail. And look, as always, we say on away days, there's no better way of looking at some stats and looking at the game without having this man on the show.
Evening, lads.
And like magic, he appears. How are you doing, Keith?
Very well, thank you. I hope everyone's well too. I hope Pete, Chris, you're well, and nice to see you again, Lewis.
Yeah, and you, Keith.
Brilliant stuff. So, welcome back, Keith, and thank you for joining us for the Takeover anniversary last night in the chat. Some great points made, and some great points made tonight as well, but in the chat also. But have you got any stats for us this week? Are we? Is it something we're looking forward to, or is it something we should be avoiding?
Yeah, I've got a load of stats. I've got some head-to-head stats, and I've got some stats on managers and players, some general stats, and then I've got a special stat there for the takeover as well. But before I start, if I'm okay to, I'd like to just say a few words about Martin from the channel, from NUFC Matters. I'd just like to say a big, massive thank you to Martin for everything that he's contributed to this channel and NUFC Matters. Always loved listening to Martin on both forums, and he's been missed, certainly by myself. And a special shout out to Martin as well, because he actually was first invited us on the channel, but back when it was loaded weekly. One of the first few shows, he put that shout out there, and he actually DM'd me. So thank you again for that, Martin. Hope to see you on the channel down the road at some point.
Very well said.
Thank you. I'll just moving on to the stats there. Newcastle all-time record in this fixture. Not many games, actually, surprisingly. 14 only. They've won 9, they've drawn 1, and they've lost 4. And they also have a much better record at home as well. 8 games played, won 6, drawn 1, and lost 1. So that's a good start there. Newcastle are unbeaten in 6 league games at home with Brentford. They've won 5 and they've drawn 1. They've scored 17 goals going all the way back to 92-93 season. Before losing against Brentford in the Carabao Cup quarter-final in 2020, Newcastle hadn't lost a league game against Brentford going back to 1948. When they lost 1-0 at Griffin Park. Newcastle have the more goals in this fixture, slight advantage, 29 goals to Brentford's 20. Eddie Howe, moving on to the managers, he's got a slight advantage. He's managed 7 games against Brentford with 3 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats. So he's averaging over a point, maybe a point and a half in games against Brentford. Whereas Thomas Frank, not many games against Newcastle, 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 defeat in his 3 games. Moving on to the players, Callum Wilson has scored 5 goals in his last 5 Premier League games. And his record against Brentford, 1-7 against Brentford. Ivan Toney has been involved in 7 of Brentford's 15 Premier League goals this season with 5 goals and 2 assists. So again, Ivan Toney really in form, playing really well for Brentford as well, made a really good start of the season. A few general stats. Newcastle have lost only 1 of the last 14 Premier League home games, but the last 3 games have been draws. So that's a record we'll want to put to an end tomorrow. Want to get back on the winning trail again. Newcastle, again, just touching on that again, unbeaten in 4 Premier League home games. It's the best run and best start since they actually went 6 unbeaten at home in 2011-12 season. Brentford's goalless draws, conversely, at goalless draw at Bournemouth last week. It was Brentford's first clean sheet in 20 Premier League away games. So Brentford have been playing really well at home, but away from home they've been leaking a few goals. And Brentford tomorrow will go 3 league games without scoring for the first time since April 2019 if they don't score against Newcastle tomorrow. Newcastle have gained 11 points. I mentioned here there was a special few takeover stats. Newcastle have gained 11 points from 8 games this season, and that's already 8 points more than they had at the same point last season. With Steve Bruce leaving the club, they're leaving them in 19th position with 3 points. So you might have a few grumblers and naysayers, but sometimes you've got to look how far we've actually came in a short space of time.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd put this together as well, a special takeover 1 year on stat for you as well. In the last year since the takeover, Newcastle have played 38 league games in the Premier League. They've won 15, they've drawn 12, and they've lost 11. So that's 57 points there. So already, if you think about it, if that had been a whole season, would be pretty much where we are on the table now, wouldn't we? We'd be about 7th, 8th or something, which is a hell of an improvement from where we've been over the years, trying to get to 40 points. And that is the stats for the night on Newcastle versus Brentford.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah, 100% brilliant stuff, Keith, in there. And yeah, 57 points. That pretty much takes us to around the European spots, like as you just said. That would probably be close to getting us, Europa Conference football, at the least. So exciting times ahead, and we've already made a more positive start this season. Obviously, all seasons are different, but it'd be nice to see if we can try and build on that and build the same way. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be an interesting game. It's gonna be an interesting game. And look, I'll move on to this section here because I've asked. Oh, hold on 1 second. I did ask for. Yeah, that's right. I got it. I got all confused for a second here. I asked for Lewis to share his team for me. So if you can see it on the screen now, I'll put Lewis's team against our team. Does that formation in the lineup look about right in what you think it's going to be, Lewis, for the game on Saturday?
Yeah, I think so. We're missing a few players. So Pontus Jansson, I'm not sure he's travelled with the squad. Christian Norgard, who we all recognise as our best player, is out. Lewis Potter is out as well with a foot injury. So we're kind of, a little bit stretched tomorrow. And I think it'll be something like that anyway. Josh De Silva, who in the Championship was a superb player for us,
Yeah.
out with a long-term injury. I think he then, am I right? I'm not sure. I think he got sent off against you lot actually in the home fixture last season, which kind of just decided that game, really, I think. So, but we need him to be really firing again because he's a serious talent. So I've put him in there, although he's been in and out. He's sometimes on the bench, sometimes starts. Damsgaard started last week for the first time, as I said, so I think he'll stay in there. And we've got 2 players coming back. One is Sergi Canos, who apparently is back in the squad. And more importantly, actually, for us is Ethan Pinnock, one of the centre-backs, who I think is just, he's one of Brentford's very best players. So, but I think both will probably start on the bench tomorrow. It'll be something like that anyway. Something like that, 11, I think.
Okay, look, Morembo, I like him as a player. I think he's a talented player. He played well at St James's Park last season as well, playing alongside or just behind Ivan Toney. And look, where do you think? Before I asked Chris and Keith the same question from the opposite side of the coin, well, where do you think Brentford or could trouble Newcastle United? Where are your strengths this season?
I think down the left you've got Rico Henry there, who we were talking earlier about Southgate picking like 4 right backs.
Yes.
It's an injustice that he's not got to go because he has been outstanding for us this season. I've never, I've seen, I think I've maybe missed 1 or 2 games this season. I've not seen anyone come close to Henry in terms of left backs, and I don't see Luke Shaw or Chilwell being better than him. I actually thought Shaw played well against Germany, but Henry's in a different league at the moment from those 2, so that's very difficult to accept that he's not in the squad. Again, just looking at the positive, the fact he's going to get a month off in November, December is quite handy, and he's not going to return injured and all that stuff. But you need to keep an eye on him. He comes forward rapidly. No one kind of beats him. He's just too quick. He's too competitive. He's a hell of a player. Damsgaard, is he ready to fire yet? I don't know, but if he does, then he'll be a threat. And I think anyone's going to have to play really well to get past Ben Mee tomorrow on the form he's in. And you're right. I think Mbeumo and Toney are a good combination. And Mbeumo's got electric pace. Yeah. He'll chase everything. He's got pretty good ball control. He is a random finisher, though. That's the problem. When he's in front of goal, no one knows if it's going to go anywhere near the target or not. So, but he combines really well with Ivan Toney. That they know each other's games. They play each other in. Quite often, actually, you'll see Mbeumo play ahead of Toney, which is quite interesting. So he's there on the shoulder, ready for a through ball, often from Ivan himself. And the last player I'd mention there, actually, who has been, I think, lucky to still be with Brentford because his performances over the last 2 or 3 years have been inconsistent and disappointing, is Matthias Jensen. This season he's been superb. He's been one of our best players, and it's like he's thriving, it seems, on the gap that Eriksen's left. So he's one to keep an eye on. Very good on the ball, more competitive than he ever used to be, and he's quite an elegant player, actually.
Interesting. That so the left side is where you think you're going to cause us the most trouble.
I think so.
Yeah. Rico Henry, Damsgaard. In the rest of it, we need to worry about the interchange in between Mbeumo and Toney. Exactly. From watching Mbeumo, he likes to make these runs in between the lines, in between the fullback and the centre back, so in between this area here, showing Trippier on that side. Toney will be front and centre. It'll be interesting to see how he gets up against Botman. Botman has been outstanding for Newcastle United. He really looks the part, and he's big, strong. Botman's 6'4", 6'5" himself. big, strong, quick for a centre back as well. Fantastic on the ball. It's going to be interesting to see how Toney gets on there, because Toney scored last time, but it was a bit of a gift in which he scored at St James's Park. Be interesting to see whether he gets the same chances again. But boys, Keith, Chris, this is the team that I've selected. Yeah, I obviously want to know your thoughts on the team in itself, and I've gone for a similar looking team for obviously the game that was won last weekend. I've only made one change, and maybe even being a bit harsh to make that change. And I've gone with Joe Linton here. And the reason why I've gone with Joe Linton is, look, Murphy had a good game. I can't argue that, but with Joe Linton back in the team, like, he has to play, in my opinion. He has to be in the team. But how do you take out of the team 2 assists from Willock, a goal from Longstaff, and Bruno just being Bruno? How do you replace that midfield? So I've gone with Joe Linton on the left, because interestingly, against Brentford at St James's last season, he played on the left, scored a goal, and played very, very well in that position.
Yes.
And look, we can talk about Alan St Maximin, who in training today just looks like he's bang on form again.
Yeah, seen that.
In the clip, he scored a wonder goal in training today. He looks the part. He looks like he's back. But I've got a feeling he might not start. But look, Chris, I'll come to you first. Like, what do you think of that team that I put out there? Do you agree? And what maybe would you do differently? And more importantly, where do you think we'll win the game?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Lewis has said. I think the left-hand side for Brentford certainly looks the strongest. Interestingly, and I always normally say that, I can't. I'm trying to move my cursor, but it won't make a difference. I normally say that the game is going to be won by Bruno. And when you look at Janelt and me, it's always around that area. For us going forward, I always think, Callum Wilson now, having Callum Wilson back, it's a massive coup for us, that having Callum Wilson there. Miggy, obviously, played fantastically well last game. But interestingly, I think this time, I'm going to say I think the game is going to be won probably in the middle, I would say, in between of Botman, Shah and Longstaff, because I think Ivan Toney drops deep. And it's whether or not, it'd be interesting to see how Botman and Shah deal with that. Because if Botman, I think what Ivan Toney's going to do is, obviously, he likes to, drop deep with the link-up play. And I think it will be interesting to see what Sean Longstaff's role is going to be in that. Because I think if you draw either Botman or Shah out to deal with Toney, that's when NUFC is then on a one-on-one. So I think it'll be interesting to see if Eddie Howe is basically saying, to the likes of Sean Longstaff, when Brentford have got the ball, keep an eye on where Ivan Toney's going, so that it doesn't pull Botman and Shah out of position. Because I can just see it now, as I say, when Toney collects it deep, I don't want to see Shah or Botman going out to him, because I think you can just see a little dink over the top, or you can see Toney laying it off, and then the ball going into NUFC, who's really, really quick. And could cause us some big problems. I must admit, sorry.
I was going to say, so I've got the ball here from Jan or Jensen, putting this ball into here. Toney receives it here, and then if they're getting sucked up into this area, into this little space there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And whether it be the both of them get sucked in, or even one of them, it can just leave it a little bit lopsided, and then all of a sudden you've got NUFC one-on-one with either Botman or Shah, depending on which side he goes. And obviously you've got the threat of Damsgaard, who's a bit of an unknown. De Silva, who, as Lewis said, he was very, very highly rated, wasn't he, Lewis? And I know you said that he was out for a period of time, and then he burst back on the scene, didn't he? Was it the Man U game where he came back, or he had a couple of good games before that game?
He came on as a sub against Leicester and got the equaliser. No, sorry, got the first goal in that game, brought us back into the game. But he's not really, and he was good against United, but he's not really kicked on since then. And we're all a little bit worried that he's, he's not going to be quite the player that he looked like he was, that he was, and B, like he looked like he could become, because we all thought he'd just be an absolute natural in the Premier League, and it's not quite happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's still time for him. He's still relatively young, isn't he? I think.
Yeah, he's probably 25 or thereabouts.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing, Pete, which you were talking about, is that left-hand side. I completely agree. I think that Joe Linton. I think Joe Linton has to play. Me personally, I don't know. I don't know what you're feeling on this. Maybe I'm thinking too much about the Leicester game. I don't know. I'd probably put Joe Linton in the middle, and I'd put Willock on the left if I was going to do that. Willock's got the legs as well. I think Willock up and down, and obviously we saw that lung busting run when we played Leicester, and then Willock put the ball in, and Bruno headed. The rest was history. I just love Joe Linton in the middle, and I think Bruno and Joe Linton really complement each other. And don't forget, they've just recently dyed the hair as well, Pete. So we've got our two white blondes in the middle. But yeah, I think the left hand side will be interesting. I don't think St. Maximin will start. I think he'll probably come off the bench, like you say. I think the back four picks itself at the minute. I don't think you can swap that back four. Obviously, Pope's going to start. Longstaff, it would be very harsh to drop him. Miggy, fantastic. Wilson back on form, and obviously with Isaac out. So I think you've got the starting 11 pretty spot on. What I will be interested to see is what happens on that left hand side, and whether they decide to play Joe Linton there because of obviously what he did last time against Brentford, or whether they decide to put someone more out there with legs. Who knows? Could give Fraser a go. Could keep with Murphy. Who knows? But I think they're the two positions that have probably got the most confusion around, I'd say.
Can I just jump in there? It's interesting that neither of you are kind of imagining that is it San Maximan? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
His performance last year against Brentford was by far the best performance by any player that I saw last season. He just tore us apart. We couldn't handle him from minute 1 to minute 90, and Joe Linton was outstanding as well. And it's interesting because I'd heard all this stuff that he was like substandard, and then he was like really impressive against us, and we thought, oh god, he's become good at the wrong time. But San Maximin was just unreal. We just couldn't cope with him at all, and he looked similar against that game I was going on about earlier against Man City on the telly. He was like, it's like just unstoppable. So if he's not going to start, I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Lewis, the only reason that Pete and I probably think he won't start is because, am I right in saying Pete's been about 6 weeks he's been out?
Yeah, it's been close to that. He got his. It was the. It's been 6 weeks. It was the Wolves game because he scored the wonder goal, didn't he? He scored the wonder goal, and then it was
hobbled off.
Yeah, he had a run. He had a run.
He's been out injured all this time, has he?
Yeah.
Oh,
he scored the wonder goal against Wolves to obviously draw it 1-1. He then went on a run like 2 minutes later in a goal, and I think I remember because we were both at the game, Chris. I remember when he ran through. As soon as he hit it really awkwardly, and obviously the keeper saved it. But he straight away, as soon as he kicked the ball, he went straight to his hamstring, and I was like, "Oh no!" And he's been out ever since. So it must have been a bad one. But Howe is very cautious and likes them to be 100% fit before they come back in. He's not a Bruce where he kind of risks them at 80%.
Yeah.
So it could well be that in the last week or so he's had intensive training. He's trained all week, as Howe said in his press conference today. So it could well be the quite opposite. It could well be, this situation in that he goes ASM here, Willock here, because I just think he'll struggle to drop Willock. And he'll play ASM and he'll give him 60 minutes and say, right, give me 60 minutes of your absolute best. And then he brings Joe Linton on to play that role. Or, as Chris quite rightly said, and it'll be interesting to see how it works, plays Willock there later on and Joe Linton in the middle to be that kind of ball breaker as we talk about. He just breaks up the play, and hopefully we're in a comfortable position where he can just stop any attacks from Brentford later on in the game. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one works. But Keith, are we wrong in this assessment? Would you agree with the Willock? Willock on the left, Joe Linton in the middle, or would you have it the reverse? Where do you think we're going to win the game potentially?
Definitely in the midfield, and definitely Joe Linton's key to that, and Bruno as well, because that game against Fulham compared to the previous games. It was night and day, really. The two areas really that struck me in those games, that game against Fulham, was Bruno's impact and Callum Wilson as well. Callum Wilson's just got the ability to sort of, he just seemed to be that player, that last final third player we were missing in the games before. Those games we were struggling to at home at St James's, really. And I was so happy, the first 11 minutes into the game when he got that goal. And he's just got the ability to bring the other players forward, really, and link them in, and just. So I think that's your main areas, really, where it's going to be crucial tomorrow. I can see Callum Wilson scoring at St James's tomorrow, and again, I think ESM will factor. Will it be on the wing? Will he make the change and take Joe Linton off, or if it's Willock, sort of 60, 70 minutes in, will he bring ESM in if the game's going really well, or will it be Wilson? Because Wilson obviously still isn't match fit. Is he going to take him off after 65, 70 minutes and put ESM in there again? If the game's going well, if Newcastle are a couple of goals up, we might see the likes of ESM being brought in maybe 65 minutes in.
No,
Just to add as well, Pete, just to follow on, I just did a little check. So the Wolves game was the 28th of August. So it'll be 6 weeks on Sunday since ASM played. And I think it was because we had that week off, didn't we, for, obviously the passing of the Queen. So that's probably what's extended the break. But going back to what you were saying there before, Pete, about the ASM video, and yeah, it was a fantastic finish, wasn't it, in training? But did you notice how many bandages he had on his legs? And when he was sitting there, I was thinking, no, don't get injured again.
Literally, to be fair, I think it's something that he does in training. In that he has those, because it's kind of those bandages. It's the huge bandages that protect his hamstrings. Because what they do, they're tight to his hamstring, so they keep everything locked in. It's like when like cyclists wear like that lycra. It keeps their muscles that kind of like really tight in. I don't know how it works from a from a physical point of view. I don't know how it works, but apparently it does. It keeps it like really locked in, so it avoids any pulls or any strains. So I think that's how he trains. I don't expect him to wear them on Saturday. If he does, I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, I did see them, and it was very, very interesting. It seems like the longer he's been playing for us, the more wrapped up he is. Like I could just imagine him coming on with his dressing gown at some point, and just be completely wrapped up whilst he's playing the match. But yeah, it was very, very interesting. But he did look back to his lightning best. Looked very, very confident on the ball, running at speed. It's exactly what we wanted to see, that's for sure. But what was interesting about that, and I don't know if anyone in the chat had caught on to it themselves, and I don't know if any of you, Keith or Chris, had noticed it, but obviously you talked about the Bruno Joe Linton hair style, and I think did they put it out today, or was it yesterday that they put it out about the hair? Dyeing the hair, was it yesterday?
It was today or last night.
Today. So what was interesting about that is that obviously during the training sessions, it had a mixture. So if you watch the clips in the video, you got at the beginning of the training session, Bruno and Joe Linton have got like dark hair, and then parts way through they've got blonde hair. So it's clearly a mix and match of training over the course of the last few days. But what you see in that is Alan St-Maximin constantly involved in training. So he's been in first team training constantly, in with all that intensity, probably for at least this week, which gives us a lot of confidence that he's ready to be involved heavily in the game in one way, shape or form. So it'll be interesting to see how it all comes about and how it all works. That's for sure. So
Pete, just to add, sorry, just one last thing. I was just going to ask you, do you think it's slightly harsh if we drop Murphy? given the performance from last game? Or do you think, as soon as Maxi turns, say Eddie Howe's like, right, I want to start Maxi. I know we've spoke about this loads of times before, and if Maxi's fit, Maxi plays kind of thing. But do you think it would be harsh to drop Murphy, to accommodate Joe Linton, for example, if it was, about getting Joe Linton back in?
I do. I think he's had a decent game, but he's also had a lot of games where he's come on and done nothing.
Yeah.
So therefore, with Joe Linton, for me, it has to play. He's had a week of training. He's back fit again. He's past his knee problem. He's one of those ever presents, and it must be a bad injury that keeps him out, because he's had injuries with his groin and with his knees, with his back, and he's always come back and played. And he wanted to play on Saturday. That's why he was in the squad, but Howe didn't want to risk him. But now he's had a week of training and he feels back to his best. I think there's always going to be room for Joe Linton. I think he's always going to start. But it's going to be interesting, really, really interesting. I really like, Lewis, from your perspective, how Brentford are going to line up, and I'm really interested to see that Janssen in particular, how he plays, because you said he's been one of your best players, and how he comes up against the likes of Bruno and potentially Willock or Joe Linton in that midfield. But equally, I'm really interested to see how Toney comes up against the likes of Botman and Shaw. I really like, this is going to be a different type of test for Botman and Shaw. They've been very, very good this season when they played together. Very good, but this would be a real big test for them. It'll be interesting to see how things go on. But look, as we're getting towards the end, I want to get some predictions, guys. So come 5 o'clock on Saturday evening, what do we think the scores are going to be? So, Chris, I'll come to you first.
Do you know what I feel? And maybe Lewis doesn't want to hear this. I feel, especially after the performance against Fulham, I just feel really confident. I think we're going into the game. Having Callum Wilson back's a big plus. Having Bruno's back's a big plus. Possibly Maxi as well. I mean, I just think at home we're a big threat. And it'd be interesting to hear Lewis's thoughts on that as well. I think coming to St James's Park now is no longer, an easy game, which I know a lot of clubs used to think, we'll just turn up here and get the 3 points. I don't feel that that's the case with Newcastle anymore. I think off the back of that Fulham result, going away from home, I've seen people saying today, which is a valid point. People going, we need this win. Because otherwise, if we were to get a draw or potentially lose against Brentford, then that Fulham away win kind of, is watered down a little bit. So it's important that we get those back-to-back wins. So for me, I think we're going to go out on the front foot. I think we're going to, really, really push Brentford and really go for Brentford. And I'm gonna go for the stupendous. I'm gonna say 3-1. I think Newcastle will win 3-1.
Ooh. Gone for it, 3-1. So, Lewis, I'll come to you from a Brentford perspective. Come 5 o'clock, you're going to be there in the away end. What do you think the result's going to be at St James's Park?
My heart says 3-3, same as last season. I think there'll be lots of goals in it. I think you lot will definitely score. I think we'll score. And, I think it's going to be a game full of attacking football and a really good game. My head says, I would agree with Chris. I can see it being like 3-1, 4-2 possibly. I think you'll edge it. We were poor. I mean, Bournemouth was a bit of a nothing game. I couldn't go to that game actually because they haven't got enough spaces in their away end for people without absolute top kind of loyalty points like myself. So I didn't go to that, but it sounded like a drab game, and we were the better side. But it was a very poor performance. Previous game against Arsenal, we were outclassed, to be honest. So we're not on the best run in the world. And looking at your lineup there, including, let's say, Nick Pope in goal, he was awful against Germany, I thought, actually. But, in terms of shot stopping, he's as good as anyone in the league, I think. I'm a huge fan of his. So, yeah, I would be delighted with a point. I think that you guys will edge it, but there'll be goals, be lots of goals. It'll be a really good game.
Interesting. Goals. It seems like Keith. We can always have some realism from yourself. Interested to know your thoughts about how it's going to come about. Is it going to be the Keith realism in terms of a draw? Are you going to sit on the fence, or are you going to go one way or the other? What do you think?
Well, this sort of fence that I've been sitting on for many weeks now is sort of getting rather thorny. It's starting to hurt really. Newcastle have to win tomorrow. I think. Not. I don't want to be arrogant about this, or but for aspirations that we have, and if we say we're a good team and we're going in the right direction, we've got to start winning at St James's Park. It seems like a while. It's nearly 2 months, I believe, since that opening day victory against Nottingham Forest. That said, though, I have been impressed by Brentford's start of the season, in particular, the brilliant result against Man United, Ben Mee, etc., in that game, and as well against Leeds as well. Some impressive wins there at the new Brentford Stadium. So as well, I was surprised when looking at the stats, the home and away difference there a little bit with the performances and goals that were leaked. So for that reason, I'm predicting tomorrow will be a hell of a cracking game. It's going to be a fantastic atmosphere. Early doors with the 1-year takeover anniversary and the weekend, etc. I'm thinking there's going to be shots flying in from both sides. I think the crossbar is going to be hit. There's going to be shots going everywhere on the underside of the crossbar. There could be a penalty in there or two. There could be a penalty for both sides, but I think it's going to be a thrilling game. But I think Newcastle will edge it 2-1.
Oh, he's gone. He's
There
gone
it is.
either way.
There it is.
Nobody's on the
Watch, it'll
fence.
be 1-0 to Brentford tomorrow. Now I've said that. It's going to be 2-1 tomorrow at Newcastle.
Oh, brilliant. No, I love it. I love it. Well done for getting yourself off that thorny fence, Keith. And you predicted a Newcastle win. I think it'll be a relatively close game. Brentford are a good side. We have to respect Brentford. Coming to St James's Park last season, they got a point, well deserved as well. But I do think it'll be close. But I think Newcastle win 2-1. I do see them getting a goal, maybe even scoring first, and Newcastle potentially coming back. But I've got a feeling that if both teams scores, it'll be Toney and Wilson that will get the goals. I've just got a feeling the English striking contingent will be on fire. And it wouldn't surprise me I don't know if it's the case. Wouldn't surprise me if Gareth Southgate's watching this game on Saturday if he comes to St James's Park to watch it. It wouldn't surprise me at all, because they are the two strikers that England are looking at really for the World Cup. Abraham's, yes, but I think they're the ones that are fighting out for that position at this moment in time. So
it's worth the journey, Pete. It's worth the journey. There's plenty of talent for them to watch there. Plenty.
Yeah. From both teams for sure, and it would benefit him to go there. And he has been coming back to Newcastle a little bit more often since the takeover. Surprising that, but he's been coming back and up north, to watch a few more matches. So let's see how that pans out. But look, are there any couple of quick fire questions before we wrap up and let Lewis go? I think there's maybe a couple of questions in there for Lewis. Before we head off.
That absolutely is, mate. This was an interesting one from Paul Hodgson. So I'm assuming Paul's asking you this, Lewis, in terms of maybe if Toney moves on, not necessarily, January, maybe next summer or whatever. Would you have Ollie Watkins back at Brentford? Villa still don't know what they need.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I love Ollie Watkins. What a fantastic person, apart from anything else. I actually rate Ivan Toney higher than Ollie Watkins, and we tend not to go back for players. So, for instance, there was talk. I would have loved Said Benrahma to come back, because he's been absolutely ruined at West Ham. I think he'd be let off the leash at Brentford, but they didn't go back in for him, and I think that's quite telling. So, I think in reality we wouldn't go for Ollie Watkins. What we always do, is we go for a young player that no one's ever heard of, and try and get some value from that transaction. So again, my heart says yes, I'd love him back, in a heartbeat. My head says I don't think they go for him, and actually I trust in the way that the clubs run, that they will make the right call, and I don't think that would be Ollie.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he would cost. I think he'd cost a lot of money to bring back, wouldn't he? And like you say, maybe it wouldn't.
But I think Villa are interesting because they've got 2 top class strikers there. But if I was Danny Ings, I would look for a move because I can't see those 2 really combining effectively. They got the same issue with Coutinho and Buendia, where they're pretty much the same player really to some extent, and so you've got 4 top quality players there, really only 2 of whom can play every week, so that they've got some average players in other positions, so they're concentrated in a few areas really. So I think those 4 players are perhaps playing for the wrong football club.
Yeah, I've got 2 more questions for you, Lewis. Quite quick ones. But Jordy Toon for Life said this is a question. It's not really a question. It's more just an observation, which I thought was a really good one. He says, "Does Lewis know we have a completely different back 4 plus a new goalkeeper than when we played Brentford last season at home in that 3-3 game?" Which is
I do, and I'm predicting goals, but I do take that point from the goalkeeper forward to that back 4. That looks a really different proposition from what it was last season, so I know it's going to be tougher. I've just got that feeling that, like Keith was saying, it's going to be exciting, and I think both teams will be let off the handbrake. And Brentford constantly surprise us. It wouldn't be unthinkable for us to actually boss the game tomorrow. It's possible. It's quite possible, and spoil your party.
Yeah.
I don't know too much about your new centre back, but you guys obviously really rate him. Nick Pope is fantastic. Trippier looks really good, and God, he can take a dead ball kick. So I know it's going to be tougher than it was last year.
We haven't had a Trippier special for a while, have we? 6 weeks, Man City, 6-7 weeks.
That must be 7 weeks, wasn't it? That must be before the Wolves game, wasn't it?
Well, let's
Sorry,
hope
Lewis.
8 weeks.
Sorry, Lewis. I think he's due another one. Great stuff, Chris. Time's ticking. Come on, Chips. You know what you need to do. Any more for Lewis before we sign off?
Yeah, so we've got 2 more really quick ones. So Michael Pomar said, "I watched the first half of the Brentford game at the weekend. Honestly, I lost all desire to watch the second half as there was so much sloppy play and little quality. What was Lewis's take on the game?"
Well, I didn't actually watch it live because, like I said, I couldn't get a ticket, and I was at a music festival actually in Brighton on the day. So I was keeping an eye. I was with a couple of Brentford fans who also couldn't get. So we were keeping an eye on the updates and stuff. It sounded quite a miserable game. My friends who did go to the game said it was dire. So I think Michael is absolutely spot on there. I saw the highlights on Match of the Day, and again, it didn't look like much.
I like that.
I think it's just one of those games you just have to write it off, and a point wasn't too bad result, but it sounds like 3 points were there for the taking.
Yeah. And then the final question's from Yano, and Yano's kind of worded it twice, but I'll use the first one that Yano's put, and Yano has said, "Question for Lewis: given the poor reaction of many fans to the relocation, how do you feel the move has been for your club?"
Yeah, well, I think all of us were apprehensive because while Griffin Park was kind of fairly run down, and you had to hold your nose when you went into the toilets and stuff, actually, in so many ways, they've done it really well. It's very near to where it was. It's still part of the community. It's not one of these out of town clubs, which are sold, some of the. I went to Colchester for the first time this season, and Jesus, that's like on the edge of a motorway, and it's just so it's still part of the community. The ground itself is, yes, it's a new ground, but it's a lot better than a lot of the other new grounds. they've done something really good with the sound there, so the sound stays locked in, and it really is kind of kicking on match day. So I think, you know, everyone is just really pleasantly surprised and relieved. And yeah, it's funny how quickly you forget about Griffin Park. And I don't think it's just me. I think, you know, a lot of fans would say that it was like this big kind of threat to everyone's enjoyment of Saturday afternoon was the move of the ground, but they've done it so well. And Brentford keep on getting stuff right. You know, it's such a well-run club.
You are right. That's for sure. But no, great questions as always. Thank you for those in the chat that put those questions to Lewis today. And look, as always, before we sign off, we have to say thank you to our sponsors. So Simon's been in the chat. Shyburns, www.shyburns.com. Get involved with all of his fantastic gear that's available. And as well, it all is to a good cause with massive support to mental health. So thank you for your contributions as always, Simon. And of course, I mean, you haven't yet grabbed one of his fantastic t-shirts, please do. One of our loaded specials. And of course, the one I'm wearing that you might be able to see in the corner of your screen, the old classic Brazilian away days t-shirt. If you haven't got one, get yourself one. They are fantastic and really, really good quality as well. Really good quality. I enjoy wearing this one on a Thursday evening. Thank you to Pins and Prints. As always, Pins and Prints, massive supporters of the channel. Get your pins and your various prints that are available. Daz showed you one or two from last night of those pins and prints. There was the Craig Bellamy one that was on the other side from a pins point of view that was fantastic as well. And of course, Marty from Machine House, thank you for your continued support. Some of their new range here, some of their new tops that are available. We love the fact that we have some local sponsors representing Loaded Mag, NUFC, and Marty is one of them as well with Machine House's fantastic gear. So if you haven't been to Machine House, get involved in that. And of course, our newest sponsor, Dean, hope you're well and recovering well after your bad injury playing football. You know, we're obviously sending our best wishes your way. The Geordie Rise. So again, another fantastic local sponsor. And they have some brilliant gear, very different to what Shyburns and Machine House are offering. Of course, some of it is Newcastle related as well. And of course, I love that top. I might
it's cool.
It's on my list, that is for sure. So thank you, everyone. Of course, we can't leave by saying we're on the way to 5,000. We're keeping pushing. We're moving nicely towards that 5K. So if any new subscribers in the chat that have seen this, just click the subscribe button. It just takes one click of a button, but it means so much to us, and we really appreciate your support. And if you haven't already, click that thumbs up button that lets everyone know about this show, and it means that more people can access it and see the fantastic chat that we've had from both Keith and Lewis as well, from a Brentford perspective. And of course, if you want to be a member, $1.99 a month, click that blue button that you can see on the screen that says join and become a member of the Loaded family. Brilliant show as always. And of course, what's to come is Saturday, potentially Sunday. We'll let you know what's happening. But yeah, we'll be doing a Brentford reaction. Hopefully talk about 3 points from a Newcastle perspective. But equally, as Simon mentioned, I think it's going to be an entertaining game regardless. So I think there'll be lots to talk about. So come and join us for that Loaded reaction, and we'll let you know the exact time and day that it's going to be taking place. But look, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure having all of you on. Thank you, Lewis, firstly, from a Brentford perspective, from BEESOTTED. It's his second time on the show. Really enjoy it. We'd love to have you back for the return fixture later on in the season. It'd be great to have you on and joining us. There's no doubt about it. And Keith, Statman, 00 Stato, always a pleasure, never a chore. And you know what? Your comments regarding Martin were absolutely spot on. So, from our loaded point of view, thank you to you for sharing your points of view about that. And we wish Martin all the best as always. And look, Keith, I'm sure we'll have you on in the weeks and days to come with more away days antics. And Chris, great to have you back. Great to have you back.
Great to be back, mate. Great to be back.
And no doubt you'll be around and about for lots and lots of shows that are coming up as well.
No more breaks.
Yeah, no more holidays.
Don't leave it as long this time, Chris. Don't, please.
But everyone in the chat, thank you so much for your questions and your loyalty and your support. We at Loaded massively, massively appreciate it. And of course, have a fantastic weekend. Fingers crossed for 3 points, and we do love playing away. You take care. Have a good evening. Speak to you soon.
Bye, guys.